So, what is happening with this new Jaylen Brown contract? Let's talk about the Celtics. Let's talk about, you know, what's happening with. Recently, we've been looking at, the league, and we've been saying, okay, we have a few great teams, but, like the Bucks and the Nuggets, etc. And all these teams have big contracts. And recently, what we've been looking at, especially with a team like the Warriors, is that these big contracts are ruining great championship level teams, right? Teams which strive and contend for championships every year, because these contracts and the new CBA are getting out of control. The reason why I say this uh, is because today, I want to look at the Celtics and how are they getting impacted by this right now. The reason why I'm saying this is because the Celtics have a predicament right now. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the centerpiece of their team. They've been their guard slash wing duo for the past like 7 years, right? They've been there since they've been getting to Eastern Conference Finals and being successful in the playoffs since 2019. And honestly, we could look at them and be like, they are the past, the present, and the future of the Celtics, because honestly, they've been playing phenomenally, right? But what we could really look at, right now and see a a a pattern in is that when you have big stars and when you're a big franchise, you need big contracts, right? And that's just what happens with the Warriors with their big three, where Steph, Clay, and Draymond all demand over 20 million, right? Over 25 million or more. And that's with them taking pay cuts. You could see it with a team like the Nuggets, where their top three guys, which are Jokic, Jamal, and MPJ, all already got their bag. And you could see it in a team like Milwaukee, where even though Giannis has got a supermax, right, and Drew's got his money, he's making like 30 million a year. This season, they had to extend Chris Middleton for another like 40 million a year, and we've seen that throughout like history. And the reason why I say that is because I believe that the Celtics are the next to fall in line. Whenever you have a homegrown team, a team which you build yourself, right, which you build through drafting, through trading, but that you built with stars, which all came from the draft, teams run into a problem. And that is that you are the team which can offer stars the most money. You see, with a team like Miami, even though yes, they have a lot of guys on payroll, they can only pay Jimmy so much money, because if Jimmy could make like $250 million in his contract, but he doesn't because he wasn't drafted by Miami, so he doesn't get those incentives that the league gives him. And that's all because of the NBA. The NBA has special rules for players who were drafted by certain teams, right? And that is so that players have an incentive to stay with the team that drafted them, or the team who traded for them in drafting. The reason why we see that is because the NBA doesn't want stars going around every year. They don't want stars, going into a team and getting all this money for them to then to be messed up when the star, signs with another contract after they've invested their entire team. So for the stars, they care about money, so they sign these big contracts. Now, the big thing that we could look at, right, in this deal and through all these years, right, is that star contracts are getting bigger. And through this year, we saw that Jaylen Brown is now the new proponent of what it looks like to earn a bag. Jaylen Brown is a phenomenal player. He averaged like 27 a year this year. He was pretty efficient. And even though the playoffs he stunk it up and we didn't like that, we do have to say that these and people, which are Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, have done a hell of a spectacle this year. Even with all the injuries, even with the coaching change, and even with just the struggles that the Celtics go through every year, where it's like if you don't do well, then people are going to flame you, going through and having to beat these big teams, they did a phenomenal job in the regular season. Now, the problem is that they did such a good job that Jaylen Brown got into All NBA second team, if I'm not mistaken. The reason why I said that that's a bad thing for the Celtics is because that makes Jaylen Brown eligible that this offseason, where I think he's a free agent or there's 1 year left on his contract, he is eligible for $307 million. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to turn heads and be like, what? Like, we just saw Tyrese Halliburton get paid $260 million and get paid $260 million, right? And that's with incentives, right? That's the contract if you earn all the money that there is to be earned. And the reason why I say this is because, honestly, teams now are going to run into this predicament a lot where it's like Jaylen Brown is not even a top 15 player in this league. And I could say that confidently, right? Like, let me name 15 players, right? You have LeBron, Jason Tatum, right? Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Then you have Jimmy Butler. Then you have, and I mean players who are worth more than Jaylen Brown. So who you would offer Jaylen Brown for this player and they wouldn't trade them, right? You have Tyrese Halliburton, right? You have LaMelo Ball, and etc. Like Anthony Edwards, right? De'Aaron Fox, right? And then you have Steph Curry. Then you go to KD, Devin Booker, right? And that's already 15. Now, the reason why I say that is because, and there's many more, and it's not to hate on Jaylen Brown. I'm just saying that when there are 15 players in the NBA who you wouldn't trade for Jaylen Brown, because of their age, because of how he fits, because Jaylen Brown has never proven that he could be a number one in a franchise, that creates a predicament because the Celtics now have to think, what are the Celtics going to do with Jaylen Brown? You have never proved as a player that you could be the number one option, but you are also good enough to be an All-NBA type player and be one of the best number twos in the NBA. But also, should the Celtics just give him the biggest contract in NBA history because he's been so loyal to them, or should they give him a pay cut which would probably offend him and cause him to want to leave? And this is the problem with this situation. Jaylen Brown is a phenomenal player, but he's always been a number two. So are you going to pay him like a number one, like the best player in the league, more than Jokic, more than LeBron, just because he's been loyal? Or are you going to keep going with this guy back and forth until you guys can agree on a contract, which is still going to hurt your team because it's going to leave you in cap hell since the new CBA is going to punish you for having such an expensive team? You're already paying Kristaps Porzingis $30 million. You got him for cheap, and that's a real thing. Like, Kristaps Porzingis got a 2-year, $60 million deal, and for a guy who was playing as well as he did, he should have gotten a more long-term contract. But you got Kristaps Porzingis, you let go of Marcus Smart, which fills some cap in, right? But now, as the Celtics go into the next season, I do believe that they have to watch out because Jaylen Brown could leave for nothing, and they would be left with no secondary star and no championship hopes.